Well, good morning and welcome to another Wednesday conversation. I'm Constance Howard, executive coach. I hope your Wednesday is going well. Well, I am in the DMV area, the Washington, D.C., Maryland area. Put it in the chat and tell me where you are watching me from. I would love to know. It's was cold here and now it's getting warmer, like it's about 40 degrees, and that feels like a heat wave, trust me. So I'd love to know where you're watching me from and how your morning is going, and are you in the deep freeze still? I'm going to jump right into this conversation because I want to talk about something that I think a lot of women struggle with. I know that I have struggled with this issue for a long time, and that is creating boundaries, healthy boundaries. Now, I want to make sure we know what a boundary is. A boundary is that invisible line that kind of teaches people how to treat you. Boundaries say, I accept this, but I don't accept this. Boundaries are about what you tolerate in your life and what you won't tolerate. And for a long time, I thought being a good manager, being a good sister or a good friend meant that I had to put my needs and feelings second, right? Everybody else's needs came before what I needed, right? So if you called me with a problem, that was an easy yes. I was going to answer the call. If you called, and you needed something, if I had plans, 9 times out of 10, I would change my plans. If I worked a long day and I was exhausted, but you called in the middle of the night, I would pick up the phone and say yes. That was my MO. And I know that for a lot of women, that's your MO as well. I didn't have boundaries. I had accessibility, but I didn't have boundaries, right? I allowed people to, um, kind of walk all over me because I didn't, there was no division between this is where I take care of my needs and then your needs come second. And for a long time, I thought that was the honorable thing to do. That was the right thing to do, right? To put the needs of other people ahead of my needs until it wasn't. And I know a lot of women, you understand what I'm talking about because we tend to put on that blue cape and we want to be super women. We want to be the person that everybody counts on. But it got to the point where I was physically exhausted and emotionally drained. And to be honest with you, I was becoming resentful. I would scream inside, like, why am I the one you're always calling? Why am I the first call that you make? Why can't you figure this out on your own? And you know what I realized? I realized that I was the first call because I was the quick yes. They knew they were going to get a quick yes. I was quick and I was easy. And, they weren't, I'm not saying that people are mean or they're trying to take advantage of you. They're simply trying to get something done. They're simply trying to get access to you. And what I think we don't want to realize is that we teach them to make those calls. We make those calls and make those demands. We teach people that our time and energy is available 24/7. I didn't have boundaries, as I said. Now, if you think boundaries uh, is selfish, creating boundaries is selfish, or it's pretty cold or insensitive, let me tell you that boundaries don't push people away. Boundaries teach people how to treat you, and it also teaches you that you matter. Your time and energy matter, and that they are important. It's not selfish at all. In fact, it is one of the highest forms of self-care that you can find. And for many women, being capable and dependable, being the strong one, boundaries feel uncomfortable. and they feel unfamiliar because you don't have them. That's how I felt. Now, listen, I want to tell you a story about how I created one boundary and what that did for me. I remember that I was constantly getting calls after I left the newsroom for the day. Now, remember, I had this crazy schedule because I did the early morning news block, that 4 to 7 a.m., and then the midday news block. So I was up all night and then half the day. And people would call after I would leave the newsroom. So one day I decided that was a boundary I was not going to allow. I was going to create a boundary that said, I am no longer accepting calls after I leave the newsroom unless it is a real emergency. Okay. That was such a small, simple boundary that I created, right? I chuckle about it now because it was so small. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And I thought, wow, that's pretty that was pretty harsh, right? I felt guilty about it. I felt selfish about it, but I stuck to my guns. I was determined that I was not going to take business calls after I left the newsroom for the day. Full stop, period. Right? That's the bravado that I had in my that I wanted to project. But inside I was shaky. I'll be real honest with you. And then I was confronted. And I simply said, I will no longer take business calls after I leave the newsroom unless it is a real emergency. Like I said, I felt guilty, but something shifted inside me. I realized that I gave myself two things that I hadn't given myself in a long time, and that was respect and care. I want you ladies to think about that. Being the yes person all the time and being taken advantage of, you're not giving yourself care or respect. So that's what I did. I stuck by my guns. And guess what? People adjusted. They simply adjusted. We take pride in being the go-to person. We take pride in never letting any details fall by the wayside. No balls are going to drop on our watch. And there's honor in that, but there's also a cost. And I'm sure that there are a lot of you who are living with the cost of trying to be superwoman without boundaries. Some of the costs, burnout. Burnout is not generosity. Resentment. Resentment is not leadership. And exhaustion is not self-worth. What helped me realize this, and what helps other women that I coach, is that I tell them that resentment is a sign that you need a boundary. It's a sign that there's something missing. Now, here's the deal. Boundaries are personal. Boundaries are what you need for your self-care, for your mental and emotional and physical health. Boundaries don't have to be explained. It's yours. You don't have to explain to everybody why you have this boundary. They don't have to be argued about or debated. They're not up for debate. It's your boundary. And here's the thing. It's your responsibility to create boundaries. Now, I want to tell you a story about Maya Angelou that I read a long time ago. She was a woman. Well, first of all, a lot of you know Maya Angelou. She wrote I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and she wrote 11 other books. She also wrote the poem Phenomenal Woman. And she once said, I do not allow coarse language and the use of the N-word to be spoken around me. That was her boundary. And at a party at her house, someone proceeded to use coarse language and the N-word. And she quietly went up to them and said, I don't tolerate that talk in my house. Please leave. Can you believe that? Please leave. That was her boundary. That was her personal boundary. She wasn't going to debate it, argue it, none of that. She said, I don't allow it. Please leave. That's a boundary. And that's the way you have to be with your boundaries. They're personal. You don't have to explain them. You do have to communicate them. You have to let people know where it is. What is the line that they shouldn't cross? You have to be consistent. You can't say, oh, sometimes I'll do it and sometimes I won't. For example, for me, I couldn't say sometimes I'll take the calls and sometimes I won't. I had to be consistent because when you're consistent, people know that you're serious about it. And then your boundaries have to have a consequence. So in the case of Maya Angelou, the consequence was that that person had to leave her house. You know, this form of self-care, which to me is real self-care, this form of self-care isn't warm and fuzzy. It has to be firm. But here's the deal. Boundaries are the clearest ways that we practice self-care. We don't have to be loud about them. We don't have to shout about them. We just have to be consistent. And when you begin to honor yourself in this way, you're no longer asking people for permission to live the way you want to live, and you're not offering any apologies for it. So my question for you today is this: where in your life do you need to establish a boundary? Where in your life do you feel like, you feel like you've been taken advantage of? And, you know, it's not because, as I said, it's not because people are bad people, but you've allowed your boundary to shift back. And so people call you constantly. They're putting more and more demands on you. You're drained, right? You don't feel as though, you could take on another project. Where in your life do you feel you need to establish a boundary? Start small. Start like I did. That one thing. I won't take any more calls after I leave the newsroom. Start small and then build your way up. But remember, don't argue about them. Don't debate them. Your boundaries are your boundaries. Be consistent and then have a consequence if someone breaks your boundaries. And it doesn't have to be that a major thing, but you do have to have a consequence so that people know I can't do that to or in front of this person. And guess what? People will adjust. Now, here's what I want you to do. If you need help creating boundaries, I have a one-sheet worksheet that I will be happy to send you. Put your email in the chat, and I'll be happy to send that over to you. And while you're down there, hit the subscribe button and click the bell so you'll be notified when any new videos are posted. And also let me know what you're thinking. Let me know how you're coming along and where you're struggling with boundaries, because I'd love to help you. I'm Constance Howard, executive coach, and I'm cheering for your success. I'll see you next time.